Chapter 1. Health Problems. There were four of us: George, William Samuel Harris, myself, my friends call me Jay, and Montmorency. We were sitting in my room and were smoking and talking about our bad health. We were all feeling very ill, and we were unhappy about it. Harris said he felt dizzy sometimes. George felt dizzy too. My big problem was my liver. I knew I had a bad liver. I had read about all the symptoms of liver disease in a book. I had every symptom that was written. Every time I read about an illness, I realized that I have it. One day, I had a little health problem. I went to the British Museum library to read about it. After some time, I began reading about another illness. I don't remember the name now, but it was something terrible. I knew I had that terrible illness too. I began reading the book from the letter A to the letter Z. I had the symptoms of all the diseases in the book, except for one. I didn't have housemaid's knee. This made me a bit unhappy. Why didn't I have housemaid's knee too? With all the diseases I had, I knew my life was short. I tried to examine myself. I tried to feel my heart. I tried to look at my tongue. When I had walked into the library, I had been a happy, healthy man. When I left it, I was a very ill man. I went to see my doctor. He is an old friend. Whenever I think I am ill, he examines me and says I am fine. A doctor really must have practice. This time, I thought, he will get more practice with me than with 1,000 normal patients. After all, normal patients have only one or two diseases each. "Well, what's wrong with you?" he asked. I said, "If I tell you what is wrong with me, you will die before I finish. Life is too short. I'll tell you what is not wrong with me. I don't have housemaid's knee, but I have everything else." I told him about what I had read at the library. He looked at me carefully. He listened to my heart and looked at my tongue. After that, he wrote a prescription and gave it to me. I put it in my pocket and went out. I didn't read the prescription. I took it to the chemist and gave it to him. He read it and gave it back to me. He said, "I don't have the things on the prescription." "But you're a chemist, aren't you?" I asked. He said, "You're right, sir. I'm a chemist. I don't have a shop in a hotel." I read the prescription. It said, "Every 6 hours, lb of good, fresh meat, pint of beer. Every morning, 10-mile walk. Go to bed no later than 2 o'clock each night and don't read books about things you don't understand." I followed the doctor's prescription. It saved my life. I now feel rather well, except for my liver problem. The main symptom of liver disease is a general feeling of sleepiness and no interest in working. I have suffered from this illness ever since I was a boy. Medical science was not advanced in those days. Doctors did not know that I had liver illness. They thought I was lazy. People called me a lazy little devil and said, "Go and do your work." They did not know I was ill with liver disease. Instead of giving me liver pills, they gave me blows on the head. Those blows were good for me because after each blow I went to do my work. That old remedy worked better than a box of modern pills. That evening, George, William Harris, and I sat in my room. We described our illnesses. I explained to George and William Harris how I felt in the morning. William Harris told us how he felt when he went to bed. Then George stood up and told us how he felt at night. George always thinks he is ill, but there is really nothing wrong with him. At that moment, Mrs. Poppets, the housekeeper, I served our dinner. We were not hungry. We ate some meat, onions, and cake. We had no interest in food. We began talking about our illnesses again. We all knew that our illnesses were caused by too much work. "We need a rest," said Harris. "A rest and a change," George added. "Our minds are tired from too much work. We must rest our minds." "Let's go to the countryside," I said. "We'll find a nice, quiet place with no people." Harris said, "Oh, how boring. In the country, everyone goes to bed at 8 o'clock. You can't even find a newspaper. If you want a rest and a change, then the best place is the sea." "What a terrible idea," I said. "A sea trip gives you seasickness. Who wants a whole week of seasickness? You leave on Monday and you're feeling well. On Tuesday you feel worse. Then on Wednesday you're really sick. On Thursday and Friday you're almost dead. On Saturday you can finally drink a few teaspoons of tea. On Sunday you can walk again and eat some food. Then on Monday you're happy because it's time to get off the boat. So George said, "Let's go up the river. We'll have fresh air and quiet on the river. The hard work on the boat will make us hungry, so we'll enjoy our food. We'll be so tired at the end of the day that we'll sleep well." Harris said, "You don't have any trouble sleeping, George. There are only 24 hours in the day, and you sleep most of that time. If you sleep any more, you're dead. However, I like your idea of a holiday on the River Thames." I liked it too. George was surprised that we both liked his idea. The only one who didn't like the idea was Montmorency, my fox terrier. He looked at us with his big eyes. "You like the idea, but I don't," his face said. "On the river there's nothing for me to do. I don't like looking at the trees. I certainly don't smoke. If I see a rat, you won't stop the boat so I can run after it. When I'm asleep, you'll probably rock the boat and I'll fall into the river. The whole idea is stupid." We were 3-1, so we decided to go on the river trip. Chapter 2. Planning the trip. We looked at the maps and we discussed plans. We decided to start from Kingston the following Saturday. "Harris, you and I will go to get the boat at Kingston," I said. "Then we'll take it up the river to Chertsey, where we'll meet George." George works in the city until the afternoon. George goes to sleep at a bank from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock, Monday to Friday, except on Saturdays. On Saturdays, they wake him up at 2 o'clock and put him outside the door. The next problem was where to sleep at night. George and I didn't want to sleep at inns. We wanted to camp out in the middle of nature. "How beautiful," we said, "sleeping in the country under the stars by the river." "I can imagine it all," I said. There is a golden sunset. The river is moving along quietly. The forest is full of trees and birds. The grass around us is green and little flowers grow here and there. Soon it is dark. We row our boat into a quiet corner on the river. We put up our tent and cook a simple, healthy meal. We all sit around a warm fire and eat our meal. We look up and see the moon and the stars. Then we sit in silence. How wonderful this is. We go to bed and then we dream under the stars. We dream that the world is young again. As we all sat there dreaming, Harris said, "What happens if it rains?" There is nothing poetic about Harris. He is not romantic at all. If Harris ever has tears in his eyes, he is eating raw onions. If you stand by the sea with Harris and say, "Listen to the sounds of the sea," can you hear spirits singing sad songs, the songs of those who died in these waters? He will take you by the arm and say, "I understand, my friend. You're not feeling well. Now, come with me. I know a place around the corner here where you can get some good whiskey. You'll feel better soon." Harris always knows where you can find a good whiskey. Harris was right about camping out when it rains. It's not nice at all. Just imagine, it is evening. You are all wet. There is water in the boat and all your things are wet. You find a place on the riverbank. You get out of the boat and pull out the tent. Now, 2 of you try to put it up. The tent is wet and very heavy. It is raining hard. The wind is blowing. The wet tent flies about. It falls on your head and makes you angry. It is difficult to put up a tent in good weather. It is impossible to do so in wet weather. The other man is of no help at all. He is a complete fool. The wind continues to blow and the rain continues to fall. You look at the other man and say, "What are you doing with your side of the tent?" "What are you doing?" he answers. "Don't pull on your side," you shout. "I didn't pull. You pulled," he shouts. "You're doing everything wrong," you shout. "What?" he shouts. "I can't hear you." "You don't know how to put up a tent. We'll never put up this tent," you say. At this point, the third man has pulled the boat out of the water. He is completely wet. He wants to know why the tent isn't up yet. Everyone is wet and angry. Harris was right. Camping out in rainy weather is not a good idea. We decided to camp out in good weather and sleep at an inn or a hotel in bad weather. Montmorency agreed with this decision. He likes inns and hotels. Montmorency doesn't like the quiet life. He prefers noise and confusion. He looks like a good, well-behaved dog, but he's not. When you look at Montmorency, you see an angel from paradise in the form of a small fox terrier. You think he is a sweet, gentle little dog. When old ladies and gentlemen look at him, tears come to their eyes. When he killed 12 chickens and I paid for them, I changed my opinion of Montmorency. In 1 year, he had 114 street fights with other dogs. An angry woman brought me her dead cat and called me a murderer. Montmorency loves to join the worst dogs. He then takes them around town to fight other dogs. This is his idea of a happy life. Chapter 3. Packing. The following evening we met again to discuss our plans. Harris said, "Now we must decide what to take with us. You get a piece of paper, Jay, and you get a pencil, George. I'll write the list." Harris is always like this. He tells everyone what to do, and he does nothing. My old Uncle Podger was just like Harris. When Uncle Podger did a job, everybody in the house helped. One day, Uncle Podger bought a picture. Aunt Podger asked, "Where can we put this picture?" "Leave it to me. Don't worry about it. I'll do it all," Uncle Podger said. He sent one of the girls to buy the nails. Then he sent one of the boys to tell her the size of the nails. He sent Bill to get the hammer, and he sent Tom to get the ruler. "Now get me a kitchen chair, Jim. I need 2 people to hold the chair. Maria, come here and hold the light. Tom, come here and give me the nail." He finally had the nail in his hand, but it fell on the floor. Everyone looked everywhere for the nail. When someone finally found it, Uncle Podger lost the hammer. "Where's the hammer? Where did I put the hammer? Help me find the hammer." When we found the hammer, he lost the place on the wall to put the picture. So each one of us climbed up on the chair to look for the place. Each one thought it was a different place. When Uncle Podger climbed up on the chair, he fell on the piano. Aunt Podger was very angry. She said, "The next time you put a picture on the wall, please tell me. I'll go and spend a week with my mother." Uncle Podger tried again and again. At midnight, the picture was on the wall. However, it was not straight. The wall was dirty. Everyone was tired and unhappy. Uncle Podger looked at the picture and said, "It was such an easy job." I told Harris, "You get the paper and pencil. George will write the list, and I'll do the work." The first list was too long. We threw it away. We started another list. In order to travel to the north part of the River Thames, we need a small boat, George said. With a small boat, we can carry only necessary things. We won't take a heavy tent. We can put a canvas cover over the boat at night. It will be like a little house, warm and comfortable. We made a list of all the clothes we needed. George said he knew everything about the right clothes for a trip. We discovered later that this wasn't true. We talked about food next. George said, "Let's continue with breakfast. For breakfast, we'll need a frying pan." "That's quite difficult to eat," Harris said, smiling. "Stop being stupid, Harris," I said. "Let's continue," said George. "We'll need tea, sugar, eggs, bacon, bread, butter, and jam. For lunch, we can take biscuits, cold meat, and fruit, but no cheese. The smell of cheese is too strong. After a day or 2, everything will smell of cheese. For dinner, we can take meat pies, fruit pies, tomatoes, and green vegetables. This good food will keep us healthy," George said. "We didn't take wine or beer because they both make you sleep." George continued, "We'll also need a teapot, a pan, and a camping stove. We don't want a paraffin oil stove." "Oh no, not a paraffin oil stove," I said. We once took a paraffin oil stove. It was horrible. The smell of paraffin oil was everywhere. The river smelled of paraffin. The wind smelled of paraffin. Even the sunset smelled of paraffin. When we visited the town of Marlow, it smelled of paraffin too. Even the church of Marlow smelled of paraffin. The countryside for miles around smelled of paraffin. We decided never to take a paraffin oil stove again. The next day, we bought everything we needed. We met in the evening to pack our suitcases. We got a large suitcase for the clothes and 2 large hampers for the food and utensils. I am very good at packing. Packing is one of those things that I do best. I'll organize the packing, I said to George and Harris. They agreed. George sat in the armchair and Harris put his feet up on the table. This was not what I had intended. I wanted to organize the packing, not do it. I wanted George and Harris to do all the work. However, I didn't say anything. I started packing the clothes. It took a long time, but I finally finished. I sat on the big suitcase to close it. George and Harris watched me. "Aren't you putting the boots in?" asked Harris. I had forgotten them. "Why didn't you tell me before?" I said. Harris said nothing. George laughed. I was furious. I opened the suitcase again and packed the boots. Then an awful idea came to me. Did I pack my toothbrush? I started looking for it. I took everything out of the suitcase. I found George's toothbrush. I found Harris's toothbrush. But I didn't find mine. In the end, I found it inside a boot. I packed everything again. When I finished, George asked me, "Is the soap in the suitcase?" "I don't care about the soap," I answered. I sat on the big suitcase again to close it. Then I remembered that my cigarettes were in the suitcase. I opened it again and finally closed it at 10:50 p.m. There were still the 2 hampers to pack. Harris and George decided to pack them. I sat down to watch. Chapter 4. Ready for the trip. There were dishes, cups, bottles, pans, tomatoes, cakes, and many other things to pack in the hampers. As soon as George and Harris started packing, they broke a cup. And this was just the beginning. George is the worst packer in the world. When George dies, Harris will be the worst packer in the world. They walked on things and broke them. Harris put a big jar of jam on top of a tomato and crushed it. George stepped on a big packet of butter and Harris sat on it. Soon there was butter everywhere. They packed the pies in the hamper. Then they put heavy things on top of them. The pies were crushed, just like the tomato. In the middle of all of this, there was Montmorency, of course. He put his leg in the sugar and soon there was sugar everywhere. He ran away with the teaspoons. He pretended that the lemons were rats and killed 3 of them. This was Montmorency's idea of fun. At 1 in the morning, the packing was finished. We were ready for bed. George said, "What time shall I wake you up?" Harris said, 7 o'clock. I said, 6 o'clock. "Wake us up at 6:30, George," we said. It was Mrs. Poppets who woke me up the next morning. "Do you know that it's nearly 9 o'clock?" "What?" I shouted as I jumped out of bed. I woke up Harris and George. We began to get ready, and we remembered that we had packed our toothbrushes. So we went to get them out of the suitcase. This was not an easy job. At last, we were ready to eat breakfast. While we ate breakfast, George read the newspaper. He told us about the people killed on the river and about the bad weather report. George went to work and Harris and I finished our breakfast. That morning, Montmorency invited 2 of his friends to the house. They fought most of the time. When we were finally ready, we carried our luggage to the road. We waited 20 minutes for a taxi. Taxis usually come every 3 minutes. A crowd of people was watching us. They looked at us, at Montmorency, and at Montmorency's friends. They looked at all our luggage, a big suitcase, a small bag, 2 big hampers, some pans, some umbrellas, 5 coats and raincoats. At Waterloo Station, we took the 11:05 train to Kingston. At Kingston, our boat, was waiting for us below the bridge. Harris and I put our luggage in it. We got on the boat happily, but Montmorency was worried. Harris took the oars and we started our 2-week trip on the River Thames. Harris was wearing a red and orange blazer. It was a beautiful, sunny day. We were enjoying the first moments of our holiday. When we passed Hampton Court Palace, Harris asked, "Have you ever visited the maze here?" He said he had gone into the maze once to show a friend. He studied a map of the maze before going in. He knew it was very easy to get out again. Harris said to his friend, "We'll go in and walk around for 10 minutes. Then we'll come out and have lunch. It's very easy. Take the first turn to the right each time." In the maze, they met some people who had been there for 45 minutes. They wanted to get out because they were lost. Harris said, "Follow me. I'm going out in 10 minutes." The people thanked him and started following him. Other people began following Harris too. Some of them were worried and afraid. He continued turning to the right, but he was still in the maze. Harris got lost. The people were angry with him. They all started calling for help. A young keeper heard them and came to help, but he got lost too. Finally, the old keeper came back from lunch. He let the people out. Everyone was tired and angry. Harris said, "Let's ask George to try the maze on our return trip." "Not a bad idea," I said. When we passed Molesey Lock, we were the only boat in the big lock. Usually, the lock is a very busy place. On Sundays, there are boats everywhere. People like the river and the sun. It's such a beautiful picture, the river, the trees, the flowers, and the people in their colorful clothes. At Hampton, Harris wanted to stop the boat and have a look at the church. I don't like visiting churches, but Harris loves it. I came on the trip only because I wanted to visit Hampton Church. You know, I love churches, churchyards, and tombs. The idea of not seeing Hampton Church with Mrs. Thomas's tomb makes me angry. "Who is Mrs. Thomas?" I asked. "I don't know, but she has a strange tomb." I said, "We must be at Shepperton at 5 o'clock to meet George." Harris said, "George? Why can't George be here to do some work? Why doesn't he help us with this heavy boat? What does he do at the bank? He sits behind a piece of glass all day and does nothing. I work. Why doesn't he work? I'm going to have a drink." "There are no pubs near here. The nearest pub is far away," I said. "What? We'll all die of thirst. No pubs." "If you're thirsty, we have water in the boat," I said. "Water. Water makes people ill," he said. "However, I am very thirsty and I must drink something." So he took the bottle and drank some water.